we are going to switch to the admissions process. So we're going to talk a little bit more about on our end what we're looking for, what we're expecting from those experiences and all of that. And so Kathy is going to take this one away.
So this is basically the process is after you've put your application in, submitted it, you're done as far as you know. Um, you get your VMCAS application submitted, the supplemental submitted. Yes, and we want your money unless you're an Iowa State student or an alumni. So it's a $75 what we call processing fee for the application. So you send the signature page and the processing fee and mail it to us. We are trying desperately to get a credit card system set up. I don't know when that will go live. So you will be notified, everybody that has started a supplemental will be notified when that comes live with instructions. But currently we can take checks or money orders, and we do need the signature page sent in anyway, because that's you just saying everything I've told you is true and I'm responsible for this. VMCAS, again, once they see it, even if they don't have your application, once they have all your transcripts, if you've requested the professional review, they will start doing that. Again, get your transcripts in. And that's one reference and all transcripts. Basically, it's just looking at, what is on your actual transcripts, what is entered. So did you have a B+? This is why I don't understand why they can't enter B+. But anyway, did you have a B+ or did you have a B? They will make some slight corrections. But if for some reason you did all your, I don't know, physics department names, the preface that goes on the course number before the course number, and it was really, you put in physiology, whatever they used instead of physics, they will send that back to you and tell you to correct it. So if there's a lot of mistakes, they will send you a note, they will open it back up, they will tell you to fix it, and then send it back in. Do that as soon as possible, because every minute that is held out is one less minute that we have to look at it, and it can't be out after I would say another reason for getting it in is we need to have it finished by, I think, September 30th. I'm trying to think of what VMCAS's end all date is.
Last year it was like October.
Okay.
But yeah.
They also but there's a date at which time they have sent you something you needed to correct. You don't get it back into them, you're out of luck.
Okay.
We look for verified. Again, we use the electronic transcript to create your GPAs, determine other things. So we need to have your application verified before we will look at it. This is what we look at. The academic review is 50, the committee review is 50%. We only use the 2 GPAs in the academic review. Last year we got rid of the GRE. They determined it just wasn't showing us anything through various assessments over the years. So we just use your 2 GPAs, science GPA, the last 45. We will look at your CUM only to make sure that you have a 2.50 cumulative undergraduate GPA, because that is what is required by law, don't ask me why, for you to have in order to apply. And again, this is only only just to make sure you're eligible to apply. Required science courses are only our required science courses, our prerequisite courses. It doesn't mean all your science courses, anything like that. It's just the specific courses we require. And the last 45, again, we don't split terms, so it may be 52. It has to be at least 45 at the end of a term, but say you have 44, we're going to use the whole next term to come up with that GPA. Again, this should be probably pretty familiar. The committee review is the other half. So they look at your general work experience, they look at your animal vet and research, letters of reference. Becoming more and more important is community service, leadership opportunities, personal development and special circumstances we usually get from the explanation statement on the MCAS application, and of course the essays. Okay. One thing I try to caution people about is with work experience. You might have been a lucky person that has only worked at a vet clinic because you wanted to do that. You've gotten all your experience there, but that is the only paid work you've done. Make a note in this area. Do not leave it blank, because after looking at 188 applications, and these guys are working probably 50 to 60 hours a week as well, they're going to look at that and say, this person didn't work. And that won't be true. But if you put a note there and says work experience is under veterinary animal research, that's perfect. And again, this is for any place you worked and were paid for. So fast food, retail stores, things like that. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the question was, should we start with high school for our experiences? And yes, that is correct. I recommend doing that, but it seems that, oh, excuse me. The question was, do you, when you're entering those, do you put your most recent experience at the top and work backwards? I would say yes. I have just found that sometimes Vimcast rearranges things, and I'm not sure how they do that. So in essence, my committee will look at the dates and not really care what, I shouldn't say my committee, but what, what area or when you actually did it. They'll look at the date. They don't care whether that was first, second, or third. That, would we recommend putting all your experiences on? For Iowa State, I'd say no, because the committee does not want to know, okay, I babysat my neighbor for how many years. They don't care if you spent, okay, I've spent a summer working, unless if you have some other experience. If you don't have any other, you want to put that down. But if you just have some minimal experiences, no, don't put it down. Don't put things that don't appear to have any real bearing on what, on your application. So if you worked 10 hours or 50 hours, things like that, don't put those down.
A couple of other questions about listing or describing experiences. Does it matter if it's like paragraph or bullet point form?
It doesn't matter, but paragraph, it doesn't even have to be paragraph, but putting it consecutively instead of bullet point, because you will use up your space with bullet point. So, and sometimes stuff gets cut off because you don't have enough space. So I say, look at things and do it in sentences or commas, delimiting it, things like that, because again, the bullet points, they don't show up. It's not like a crisp bullet point format.
Another one was, are there particular things that you want to highlight? So you have limited character space and say, works there for 4 summers. How do I get everything in 4 summers in that little character space?
I would put in the more responsible activities you did, regardless of whether it's just work experience, animal experience. Put in things that showed you had responsibility, things you did by yourself. Cleaning kennels is good, but I'd put in things that maybe gave you a better perspective of the clinic, and that can be being at the front desk and working with clients. But put in things that have the most responsibility. Leave out some of the other items if you don't have enough room. Put it all in if you can. Is that it? Right. I would just say, and because you're going to have to put a date in, I think VimCast requires a date to be put in the descriptions. I know a lot of people work summers or they might work intermittently at a place. You can put that in the description. Just say, I work summers between 2015 and 2018, or I worked intermittently. Estimate your number of hours per week, because there are going to be times where you didn't work at all, and there's going to be maybe you put in a 40-hour week one time. Keep track of your hours and try to do a reasonable put in a reasonable amount of time. Don't say I work 50 hours all the time when you only work intermittently. So you have to kind of guesstimate how it would come out on an hourly basis. Um, I would put it as a lifelong experience. I would put in, you can put in the dates. The dates are kind of in a way irrelevant. What you don't want to do, and this is something that I just had a person come in, is you want to make sure you're reasonable. We have, and I think that's probably coming up later. But anyway, you need to make sure you're not way overstating your hours, because number one, in our case, that will eliminate that experience. Things like that. So you just have to be reasonable. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Again, you don't want to overwhelm the committee. So make one entry. You might have started cleaning kennels, and then you helped with the front desk, and now you're assisting in surgery as you've gained responsibilities over the years. Don't put a separate entry for each one of those times. If you worked at this at one place and you could have worked for more than one veterinarian, don't again put an entry down for the large animal vet, the cat vet, the exotic vet. Don't do that. You lose the committee in that, and then they're not looking at your experiences. So you put down one experience or one place of experience, and just note in your description what you worked with. And they really don't need to know that. Wish I knew more vet terms. Sorry, I don't. But like how many calves you pulled, or that you did the each individual thing that you did. Um, just explain that you helped with. You could assist in surgeries. You can went out on farm calls and assisted the vet in whatever incidents, things like that. They don't really care what individual things you have done. Um, the experience from our committee standpoint is that you are getting to know what the profession is like you know what you're getting into, rather than just saying, oh, I love animals and I want to be a vet. um, that's what the experience is for. Technical skills, they don't care. In fact, I've heard it many times, we're going to have to reteach them anyway. So even if you've worked for a veterinarian for 5 years prior to coming here, that veterinarian has probably done things differently than our veterinarians do. So it's not the technical skills and that knowledge they want you to come in with. They want you to know that you understand what you're getting into. And that's what some of the essays are for, is to show them that you do understand. Yes, ma'am. We Okay, we use, it can be a combination or one, it doesn't matter. You can have just animal experience, you can have just veterinary experience, or just research experience. Again, depending upon what you want to do. 200 hours is what we look at as a minimum. Um, and what you write in your essays can make a big difference on how they interpret that 200 hours. For Iowa State, and this is Iowa State, pets are not considered animal experience unless you have a business. If you raise dogs, you sold dogs, bred dogs, trained dogs, horses, and were paid for it, and it was a regular business, that can be included. But if you owned a cat and a dog we had somebody do this, owned a cat and a dog, and so they put in 24 hours a day for however many years they'd had the animals. That really isn't considered experience. And the bottom line is we have no way of knowing whose responsibility it was. And so pets are not considered. College coursework is not considered. Mhm.
there doing that, how would you recommend putting that in that experience? I don't have specific hours. Probably go back and try to figure it out.
What I would do is, again, try to give yourself an average that's reasonable, and for reasonable I would be conservative. And just put in that assisted various, for the supervisor, what various veterinarians say, this is what I've done for my life, and just make a reasonable guesstimate of what you did. um, so you want them to know that you've had that experience, but you don't want to say, well, hey, I've done this since I was 13, I'm going to do that. So that's what you would do, and just be honest and upfront in your description about what you're trying to tell them.
We've got a couple of
Sure.
we've got a couple of questions online. One is what about hobbies?
Okay. Again, this is something that the committee, right now, when I first came here, it was experience and grades. That was it. That was the only thing that was considered basically in your application. Today, they're looking more for people that have developed themselves outside of veterinary medicine or going to school and going to work. They're looking for people that have want to give back to their communities, um, people that have kind of pushed themselves out of their comfort zones. Um, and hobbies is one of those things. When we look at hobbies, that would be under, usually I put it under activities, and you can just put in there. And for a hobby, I mean something that you're excelling at, that isn't part of, it could be band, it could be singing, it could be pony club, even though that's animal related, but something that you're doing that you're excelling at, but is a hobby. You're not making money at it. It's just something you do because you like it. Put that in activities and just say, this is what I've done. You've taken piano lessons. You play for the church, things like that. That you want to put down. And just put it under one of your activities. It doesn't have to be a specific club or organization that you belong to when it's something like a hobby. It could be photography. I exhibit at the state fair, certain things. So that can all be included. That would be under animal experience. That I would put for animal experience. This is for something, like I say, photography, dance, right, not veterinary, or because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something that you're doing outside of veterinary medicine. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Another question from online is what about if you are a member of an association, but you don't necessarily they don't necessarily have meetings or events. So you're part of like the South Dakota Sheep Growers, for example, is the example that they use.
There would need to be some way anybody can join a group. So you would have to demonstrate that you're somehow assisting the group.
Okay.
Um, what you do, if you're secretary, treasurer, whatever, doesn't have to be that. It can be, you host something, but there'd have to be an event or something connected with it.
What if you're taking a research course? Can you list that as research experience? So if you're, gaining
Yeah.
credits in it, yeah.
You can list it. It probably won't be considered as real experience by our committee, because experience from our committee standpoint is something you go out and do on your own. That's why they don't take coursework for animal experience and everything. They want something that you go out, do on your own, where a class is already formulated for you. You can, you just have to sit in there and everything's kind of given to you. They want experience to be kind of real world experience. Oh, yes. Hmm. Right. I would put that down as your TA. That wouldn't be work experience. I take that back. It wouldn't be research experience necessarily, but it would be work experience. No, that would be considered animal experience. Oh, thank you. Um, if you're doing something like service dog training, things like that, raising puppies for guide dogs, things like that, that's animal experience because there's certain things you have to do. It is not, it's not really a hobby, even though people might think of that. It could be, even fostering animals for an animal shelter. That's not a hobby. That would be animal experience.
Any other questions?
Anything else on that?
Oh, okay. So, so clarification that if you shadowed without pay, it still counts just as much as
Yep.
anything. Okay.
Yep. Shadowing is the same. Too many people can't get vet experience these days because of liability. Shadowing, if you're under a vet, if you were shadowing a vet, that would be veterinary experience. If you were shadowing somebody at a ranch or something like that, that would be animal experience.
Another question online is about planned experience. So if they don't have an internship, but they're planning on doing an internship, should they wait to apply till after that internship?
Depending upon what their time frame is, yes. People come in, well, I'm going to do this. We do not look at planned experience. You haven't had it. It's kind of like a course you haven't taken or a grade you haven't gotten. We don't use anything that's coming up in the future to actually evaluate because we have no way of evaluating it.
Okay. And then one last question from online. What about a class that requires outside time with animals? So, um, if you're taking an equine reproduction class, but you're required to go and care for the animals outside of class too. So
That
feeding,
that is
all of that.
yeah, that is still coursework. It's planned for you. You didn't go out and find somebody that wanted you to help with their animals. Basically, this is to show that you're independent, you're interested, you'll go out and try to find this experience on your own. Yes, sir. Oh, research for credit is fine because we count graduate. We count graduate research. If it's general research and you're assigned to an investigator, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is what I started to get into earlier. Committee will calculate your hours. So comes from a couple of years of people that have overestimated their hours. Most of these do come from people on farms. But people will double their hours. So I had somebody just recently come in and their family raised cattle and sheep. So she said she worked 30 hours a week with the cattle and sheep at home since she was 13. Then she adds in another job working for her FFA leader with his group. That's another 20 hours. For 5 years, she worked 30 hours and 20 hours during the week when she was in high school, high school or younger. Think about what you're doing because when you do that, the first thing this is just about the worst thing you can do because number one, our committee will disallow the experience, even though it might be really good experience, just because you're not being cognizant of what you're writing down. So like this one, 204,000 hours of experience, 20,000 hours more than they've been alive. I mean, we have people that must have been working on the farm when they were 3 years old. And the committee sees this, and this is one of our committee's pet peeves, is people overestimating their hours. And you don't remember that you put down, okay, I have this experience for so many years. Now I'm getting this experience. So you add and you're accumulating them rather than taking something away from another experience. Really important, just to be realistic. Because remember, you prior to college, and even in college, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to study, among just having some time off. So you just need to be realistic. I tell people, do not put experiences prior to when you were 15, 16 years old. That is when you can actually get a job, usually. Some people can get them earlier. So in general, that's when you can have solo responsibilities. Yes, ma'am. You're asked for average hours per week and number of weeks. Well, when they think it looks, yeah, they don't do it for everything, but when somebody starts putting down tens of thousands of hours, or just when you start getting up into the thousands, they start looking at it more closely. Yes, ma'am. But you can, I mean, yeah, just put down exactly what you work. That's fine, but you're never going to get work more hours than there are in a day. And that's when people start. It's when you say, I had this job for 10 years, but you had another job for 5 of that 10 years, and then another job for 3 of those 10 years. You add them all together, and you've worked more hours than is possible. And so that's what people need. You just need to be cognizant. Yes, ma'am. Right. Oh, yes. Don't use the, yeah. You'd want to put down, and that's where I would put in the experience worked summers, just to designate. So remember, these guys can't talk to you. The committee can't ask you questions. So you need to make sure they understand what you're putting down. So this is just, like I said, these are just some of the examples of comments I've gotten when I've gotten the reviews back.
So we're gonna move on to letters of evaluation or recommendation.
Mhm.
Any other questions about experience?
Mhm. Awards. Yep. A band would be an activity, and under that you would put down, you could put that in honors and awards too if you just want to say lettered and band on whatever these years are. Yes. Yep. We use both. Because some people did a lot of FFA and 4-H and things like that, and the committee does not want to neglect that experience. Right. That's where I would put it. Anything else before we move on? Okay. We talked about this some before, but we require 3. You must have those 3 letters, or it will not be looked at. So make sure you have 3. That's why we always recommend you have a 4th person, in case, because evaluators don't always get things done on time. We will not accept late evaluations. So make sure you've asked at least 4 people. But don't be afraid to say, hey, the deadline's coming up. Can are you going to be able to write me a letter of recommendation? You could choose somebody different at that time. They do want to know, um, again, these are more personality characteristics that they're asking rather than veterinary related questions. You just different types of behavior. Do you accept criticism? Are you a team player? How do you act in stressful situations? Things like that. And those are the questions they are asked. But the questions only give you a scale that Deanna was talking about. And our committee is not going to look at somebody puts, oh, okay, that person got a 5 in everything. They want a letter. So please ask your recommenders. Number 1, can you write me a good letter of recommendation? Number 2, please make sure you put letters or comments. They can, if they just want to type in comments, that's fine too. But they want to know something more than this little grid of information. Again, letters of reference for us. Now, there's some places that are different, but for us, student leader, like church leaders or your 4-H leader or people like that can give you a character reference, somebody that you know very well, is as good as a second veterinarian, or it doesn't all have to be academic veterinarian or employment. again, strongly encouraged, and don't make it your mom or dad or husband or wife, which we've had, because that negates the reference. Years ago, we had somebody said, well, I know you said I shouldn't do this, but my wife is the best one. No, you know, because his wife was a veterinarian. So anyway, make sure you're not related to these people. Um, if it's from a clinic that your parents own, um, make sure you get somebody that's not your parent to give you a reference. Um, the main thing is that they know you. Um, the idea of somebody that's well known or somebody that our committee might know is not important at all, because you can see it in the reference letter right away. We've had senators, we've had the president of the university, some well-known veterinarians, and if they write a generic letter that says, yes, I've known this person for so long, and just give you general information that really doesn't point out different aspects of you, or like, you know, why they know you're motivated to become a veterinarian, things like that, it's worth nothing. Um, so make sure you pick the people that know you. Yeah, and Deanna went over that they get a link right away, so please contact them before you send them the link. Yeah, and ask for a good or great letter. Really, when you say, can you give me a great letter of recommendation for this? And hopefully they'll be upfront with you.
So when going back to when you said, people who know you well, um, does that carry more weight than maybe somebody who, is, you know, doesn't know you super well, but knows that you've worked with animals and know how you work with animals?
If they address it that way, it can make a difference. We, one year, had a letter from a banker from town in Iowa, actually owned the bank, and said this person was great with large animals. I went on to say all this stuff, never once said how he knew that. It made no sense. It wasn't taken seriously. If he'd said, you know, my daughter showed cattle with this candidate for so many years, something like that. But there was no connect there. Same with the president of the university. Talks about how great this person is, but then never says what they really did or how they knew that they were great. So that's, if people don't know you well, they're not going to write you a good letter of recommendation. They're going to give general information. So it does depend upon what they write.
Another question was about, oh, I lost it. Should you be worried about the grammar or kind of letter of their quality, or the quality of their letter, you know, in that way?
Well, you hope it would be a professional letter, but depending upon who it is, that may not make a difference. If that person knows you well and can speak for you and what they've observed of your character, that should not make much of a difference. Okay. This is a great letter of reference. I mean, what you want is somebody that will be able to back up what they're saying about you by what they've observed. This was summary, but prior to that, this person had said what this applicant had done with them and how they knew that because of these experiences they had with them, that this is the type of applicant she is. Go to the next one. These are also letters of recommendation. We get 2 or 3 of these every year, so it's not a great amount, but you need to realize not everybody's going to give you a good letter of recommendation. I sincerely hope that you would know how this person feels about you, but these were like the comments at the end of their evaluation. So again, know your references and have them know you. Otherwise, you're either going to get something that's just not worth anything. It's not going to tell the committee anything. Or you may get something negative because you really don't know you don't know them well enough to know this is the way they feel. So this just, again, think about who you're going to select for your reference. Do not select your reference based on their position, being somebody that maybe our committee knows, anybody that has big name value. That is not important, because if they don't write you a good letter of recommendation, it will be ignored.
That would classify as like peer that you've worked with in, say, clubs or executive board positions, would that be a decent letter of recommendation?
That would be an okay letter of recommendation too. Again, just make sure that when they complete it, that they address what they've observed in you and where, instead of saying you're going to make a terrific surgeon, because they probably don't know that.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I may have missed this. You may have talked about it. So if you're reapplying this year, will it hurt you to request the same letters of recommendation?
No.
Okay.
Our committee, it's all done randomly, who's assigned the application. So you may get somebody that saw last year's application, it may not. Don't use the same letters. I think you might have that option in VMCAS, I'm not sure, but don't use the same letters. Have them write new letters.
When you when I ask somebody to write a letter and they submit it, do I get a notification saying that they submitted it? Do I know how many were there?
No, you go to the VMCAS,
Yeah.
check status. Then it'll tell you who they've received them from and which are still pending. Good. Please check that. Okay, and the community service leadership, honors personal development, this is all something that has become more and more important. Again, the same thing, 1 entry per award. So if you're on the dean's list for all 8 semesters you were in school, don't make 8 entries. Just say dean's list, list the dates, and say, I was on the dean's list for this many semesters. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So what awards?
Some maybe. It depends upon, there's an FFA award I know that's pretty significant. We look at, I think it's the Boy Scouts, Eagle Scout is significant. I think in Girl Scouts it's Silver Star or something like that. Anyway, if they're significant more than just your own little community, yes, it is important that you get those. And some like some of the sports awards you may have received in high school, I guess I would use, how significant was it to you? If it wasn't significant to you, don't put it down.
And that was awards from high school.
From high school. I'm sorry, yes, that was on awards from high school. And actually the same thing applies from awards from college. If you don't think it's significant, don't use it. Yeah, that would be good too. Yep, it just speaks to your academic performance. So those.
Yep, that question was, academic honors and awards, right? So if you graduated from as valedictorian or summa cum laude or anything like that, put those down. Yes.
Anyway, these are the things that sometimes separate you. And believe me, when we do these, there can be a whole group of people where truthfully, the person on the top of the 100, the person on the bottom of the 100 are actually just as all as well qualified. A lot of people are, I guess, average applicants. They're good. They can probably make it through vet school, no problem. These are the little things that now, they didn't used to, but now can separate you. Community services become a big thing with our faculty. They want people that'll give back. If you're going to be, particularly if you're going to be a practitioner and work in a community, they want you to be part of the community. So some of your community service is always good to put down. Look for people with leadership. Leadership does not mean being the president of a club or secretary treasurer. Leadership can mean you work with your church and every year you put together a fundraiser. That's leadership. Anytime you have to take a group of people, get them to work together to achieve a goal is leadership, where you're in charge. So those are the things you need to talk about. Honors we talked about. The personal development, yes, foreign travel, getting to know other cultures, getting to know people that are different from you. This is where they look at pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So maybe volunteer with Special Olympics if you haven't been around mentally challenged people. It could be working in a nursing home. Again, not maybe you haven't been around elderly people or people that are compromised in some way. They want you to do stuff or things that you feel is difficult that will expand your knowledge of just kind of humanity in general, learning different cultures. So that's why you need to put your foreign travel in. Yeah, being fluent in another language, and by fluent we mean not taking 4 years of Spanish in high school. We mean being able to go to somebody and speak Spanish to them. Yes, ma'am.
Besides traveling with like your French class or whatever,
Mhm.
and studying abroad or whatever, vacation, how-
Depends upon what you did.
Okay.
You know, you're the one that has to determine what you. They kind of want to know what you gained out of the experience. So a vacation, you know, and some vacations are helping people in other countries. Anything that's, again, puts you out of your comfort zone. Special circumstances, our committee looks at that as something that you've overcome that may have been detrimental to you. Could have been my sophomore year in college, I was in a car accident. How you came back and, you know, succeeded. It could be you lost a parent. Just usually we think of them as serious things that are serious and that impacted your academic career, but you overcame it. And that's something that you need to show them how you overcame it as well as, you know, or if, you know, you came in, I really screwed up my first year of school and but, you know, after I failed out the first time, this is what I did. So, you know, whether you went to study things and figured out what you can and cannot do, time management, all that, you need to tell them that to explain just, you know, maybe why your GPA isn't as high. You know, why you have a blank spot in your academics, things like that. The one thing I should tell everyone is that our committee will not see your transcripts. They will not know your academics. A lot of people like to put in this, well, I failed organic chemistry the first time around. They really don't care. You know, that happens to a lot of people. If you really feel it's important for them to know, put it here. If you don't put it there, because our committee, and again, this is not the same for all schools. Our committee will not see any of your academics until I give them a ranked list with the academic composite scores for your science GPA and your last 45. They won't know if you failed organic chemistry 3 times. So if you feel it's important to explain to the committee because of a personal triumph over what had happened, that's important, and how you can tackle a problem. But if you're just going to say, well, you know, I had this problem and I failed it the first time and I came around and retook it and got a B, you don't need to put that in. I wouldn't. So it has to be something that, again, impacted you and you really learned something from it to put into the special circumstances. I don't know, how are we doing time-wise?
Well, we're a little behind.
That's
okay.
what I figured. I'll talk fast.
So we'll cover essays. We have one of our students here. We don't have the other one. So when the other student comes,
We'll just stop.
switch.
Okay.
And then
That's, yeah. And we'll be around to answer questions. Okay. MCAS questions, you can see them. Like we encourage everybody, even if you're not applying this year, to go in and look at the application. Again, these are the 3 questions. This is where they want you to use your experiences to back up what your career goal is, why you want to do it. You don't just say, well, you know, I want to be a mixed animal practitioner in a rural setting in Iowa. They want to know, okay, why do you want to do that? What experiences did you have that made you, you know, what did you enjoy about the experiences you had that made you want to do this? So you back up each of these essays with what you have observed in the veterinary profession. And that is extremely important because they don't want you like here. What do veterinarians contribute to society? You can Google that. They'll give you a lot of great answers. They want you to go back to your experience and say, I believe veterinarians contribute such and such and such and such. You don't have to make a list of 10 things. 2 or 3 is actually good enough. And back up by what you've seen in your experience, how you have observed that contribution. And, you know, what attributes are essential to be successful. You will come up with attributes that need to be, that cause people to be successful in any endeavor. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Well, and it can be general. It doesn't have to be one specific, but it can be, you know, I worked with veterinarian A, you know, for 5 years, and I realized how important communications was because he would ... It doesn't have to be a single experience, just in general, but say you've observed it someplace and this is how you came about doing that. Again, the third one you can Google. Again, use something from your experience. Don't put every single thing. We have some people that go on and on and on with the attributes that they need that are essential. Take 2, 3, maybe 4 at the most, and then make sure you use your experience. And in this last one, people tend not to answer the last question of these attributes. Which do you possess and how have you demonstrated them? You want to answer that part of the question because that's very important to the committee. If you don't answer that, you probably won't get much credit for the essay. Okay. Our reworded diversity question. So if you applied last year, this is a new question. I'm still not sure that they'll get the answers they want, but they want people to show their appreciation of diversity. You don't have to be a diverse person. And we are not strictly talking race. We are talking about, again, different cultures, things you can learn from different cultures, things you can learn. I mean, there's people that believe in holistic medicine. There's those that think that holistic isn't any good and we want just, I guess, regular medicine, things like that. How are you going to appreciate and respect everybody's beliefs and what, you know, their ideas? So it's not how diverse are you, and that's the way our other question came across. It's talking about how will you help promote diversity in the college? How will you, again, I think the biggest thing where people's ideas, culture, ethnicity, gender, and beliefs are accepted, appreciated, and respected. And that is really important. They want people that do. Just because somebody thinks different from you, it can be or is, you know, has different gender identification, whatever, that you will accept that person and appreciate the different aspects that may be different from you. You can sit down, you can have a discussion, even though maybe you don't believe the same things. That is really important. And so that's what they're really looking for, how you will contribute to, I guess, the appreciation of diversity and the acceptance of diversity. If you're a Nebraska resident, there's 2 additional questions. Then if you are considering the DVM MBA, there is a question on that needs to be answered that goes to the MBA office.
Okay. We'll just quickly kind of
I'll let you do this one.
wrap up essays. Oh, gosh. Quickly wrap up essays and then give us like 3 or 4 minutes and we'll be on with our students to get their perspective. And then we'll come back with questions too. So, so your essays, this is 2,000 characters. That's what you've got. So when Kathy was saying, don't, you know, kind of go on and on and on, you've got a limited amount of space. So kind of go back to your 3 or 5 paragraph essay, right, in high school. The answer to the question, a few examples, conclusion. That's what, you know, like you have to be very focused for that. It's good to, so you already wrote insert essay here, right, on your application because you wanted to save it. it's good to write these in Word and then copy and paste, but be careful because sometimes the characters don't match exactly. So you may cut off a word or two. So definitely proofread that. And then just a few more essay things. So proofread. We will say proofread a lot in the next hour. I'm sure these ladies might tell you to proofread your application too. So it's good to have a grammar expert copy it in an email and say, hey, can you look at this? It's good to have one person who knows you well to be able to say, hey, what about that really cool thing that you did that you didn't put in your essays? And this would have, really backed up what you talked about. Please know the difference between veterinary and veterinarian. It's a pet peeve of our admissions committee. So veterinary is an adjective, right? Or adjective.
You don't want to be a
noun.
veterinary.
Yes.
And that comes out frequently.
Yeah. So you also want to be realistic with career goals. If you would like to open up essentially a free clinic, that's wonderful. But how the heck are you going to pay for it? With good $136,000 average student loan debt coming out of vet school. That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But so it's wonderful that you want to give back to the community as a veterinarian, but be realistic about what that's going to look like throughout your career.
And how quickly it can be done.
Yes. Yep. So obviously we talked about backup, those things. Realize that autocorrect is a thing. And so it's not going to know that you're using the wrong, version of your, or its, or whatever it is. So definitely, it's good to have that autocorrect or that spell check, but it doesn't always catch everything. And then be professional. So, and I think we've escaped this a little bit because we don't do the kind of broad personal essay. But, if you say, ever since I was 6, I've loved, working with sheep or something, that's wonderful. But think of it as human medicine, as you are applying to human medicine. You probably wouldn't start off your med school application, saying, ever since I was 6, I love working with humans. Okay, that's wonderful that you were a social 6-year-old, but it's, so if you kind of think, if you translate your essays and put them as if you were applying to med school or law school, veterinary medicine is a professional school. So you kind of want to take creative writing out of it, not necessarily your personality, but please don't start off, it was a dark and stormy night and all of that kind of stuff. Yes.
Exactly.
So question was, keep out the soft and mushy of the animal stuff. Yes. Yeah. Now, if you're talking about, oh man, I was really inspired because I got to, sit in or, kind of be in the surgery suite when this procedure was going on, and it really made me interested in learning more about orthopedic medicine. Fantastic. That's wonderful. But you don't have to say, oh, and it was, heartbreaking when, whatever, so that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Take emotion out of your essays.
Yes. Yep. I would use veterinarian.
Yeah.
Just, it's more professional. Yeah.
But you shouldn't have to repeat it too many. You can use he, she.
Yep. Doctor is also, shorter than veterinarian.
Yeah, doctor. Yeah. Doctor.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions about essays? Yes.
I mean, so you would understand that. If I mentioned that I work for a veterinarian and then went on and said,
Yeah. Or he or she. Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, we would understand that in that instance, you're talking about a doctor who is a veterinarian versus a human doctor. Yeah, human med doctor.